Gonna be massive.
Plus, Marty Pello.
Join me on a journey from Glasgow to Memphis.
Get ready for the party with these special shows and more.
Listen now on BBC Sounds.
Just search
Radio 2 in the Park.
After 50 years of waiting, some farming families in Northumberland have finally got mains electricity. The farms and cottages of the Upper Coquet Valley have always been off-grid, reliant on noisy, expensive generators that regularly break down. One woman said she wouldn't dare using even her hair straighteners if the kettle was on. Another described it as like living in the olden days, because every time the generator conked out, he would have to trudge out to crank it back up. Two neighbours even had to share a single generator, which meant they couldn't both boil a kettle at the same time without plunging their houses into darkness. But now a row of new electricity poles means they can just flick a switch and know the lights will stay on there in the Upper Coquet Valley in Northumberland. Making a cuppa without planning it, straighten their hair willy-nilly. What about that? There's still some homes that are too remote, that haven't been connected, still stuck with the chug of their backup generators, and they can only hope to be on the grid one day. But it made us think about houses that are not on the grid, where you would want to be, but you're not. Do you live in a remote farmhouse or a cottage without mains electricity, which means you've got to rely on your own generator? And are they ever going to come and change that for you? Is there a romance to being off-grid? Do you quietly like it? Email vine@bbc.co.uk. Do include your phone number, please. Text me 88291. We'll talk in a moment to a professor of future power systems. But first, Catherine Singer is a local in the Upper Coquet Valley. And there we are. You're connected, Catherine.
Hiya. Yeah, we're all connected on Tuesday. Thank you.
So, okay, describe what it was like before the connection.
It's hard to describe. It was just, we do have power in the house, but you just have to be careful of what appliances that you do switch on and when you switch them on. And obviously then we've got the generator outside always chugging away, which is quite noisy when you're sitting out in the garden.
Yeah, I was thinking that those generators I've never heard a quiet one. I don't know whether they make them quieter now, but they do really give you the sense that they want everyone to know they're working.
Yeah, definitely. And when you're out sort of walking around the farm or, walking past, you do hear them, going all the time. There's a bit of black smoke coming out of them as well.
Yeah. So you weren't connected when you had your generator, obviously. What were the restrictions on your life? I mentioned the hair straightener, for example.
Yeah, so if you've got, a generator can only cope with a certain load on it at one time. So you can't go putting the washing machine on, tumble dryer, and then switch the kettle on and go and straighten your hair. You have to plan your day a bit more to thinking, right, put the kettle on, then go and put the washing machine on, wait a bit. Or, if you did put more on, then basically it would trip out and you'd be put into darkness and then have to go outside and start the generator up again.
Was it your impression that they were on a schedule to get to you, or did they need persuading to connect you up?
No, a lot of persuading, and thanks to the MOD where we rent the farm from and the Home Office, who basically they'd put in some emergency masts up our valley and they're currently running on generators. They came along and said, can we put some mains electric to these masts, which the MOD said, yes, please do, if we can get some of our residents also connected to that mains electricity. And then we had the problem of being in the national parks, who then didn't want poles in their beautiful landscape. So it was quite a fight from finding out you could get some funding to do it to then actually getting the poles in the ground.
Is it now more expensive? No, it must be less expensive for you, surely, not to be generating your own power, but I don't know.
I'm hoping it's going to be a lot less expensive. Obviously, we've been putting diesel in the generators, the maintaining of the generators. If it breaks or it gets old, you've got to buy a new one, or you've got your batteries and inverter system that's also part of the generator system that you have to continually look after and replace. It comes to its end of life eventually. So
what was the first thing you did when you were connected up?
I tried my cooker because my cooker hasn't worked properly ever since we changed our generator. So
it's electric cooker, is it? Well, you've not got gas either then.
We've got a gas cooker, but it's got an electric ignite switch.
Oh, I see, yeah.
the ignite switch would never work with our newer generator. So I'd always, every time I wanted to switch my cooker on, had to go outside, change it to the old generator, put my cooker on, and then go back out and change it to the new generator. So we actually had 2 generators running.
Amazing, amazing. A revolution. Thank you. Keith Bell is listening to that, Professor of Future Power Systems at the University of Strathclyde. I suppose we forget that, back in the day, most people would have been in Catherine's situation, although they wouldn't have had a generator, Keith.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's only, through the 20th century that we've become used to having our whole of our society electrified and access to all of that power.
And so give us a bit of a potted history, if you can, of the rollout of the grid.
So there were local power stations were built through right at the very end of the 19th century and in the early 20th, pretty much around sort of towns and cities, with a power station that was just sized for a local need, as perceived by private investors who built those stations and built the wires to connect up. And as time went on, interest in having electric light and refrigeration and so on grew and grew. The market increased, but there was a kind of lack of coordination, and it took some government intervention through kind of pre and post Second World War, really, to sort of rationalize a lot of this, extend the network out, and the benefit of that, of kind of having a network that connects actually the whole country, is it gives access to sort of economies of scale. Bigger power stations can be more efficient, and therefore the energy is cheaper. And in the kind of pooling of resources, so that if, a bit like what Catherine was saying, if a generator breaks down, you want to get access to another one. Okay, so she's had 2. Maybe that was kind of a bit by accident. But everybody, if a generator breaks down, almost always for us as a nation, there is another one that's available and can meet our needs. And the other benefit of pooling of resources is there's some degree of competition or choice. So on a basis of cost, there's a wholesale market that is supposed to drive the cost down, but we can also get access to cheaper energy. If we want to choose to use cleaner power, then we can do that.
Just the interesting thing about Catherine, your story is this element of you live in obviously an area of outstanding natural beauty. You said you're in a national park, and then we think, well, hang on, we don't want pylons. Do we even want telegraph poles? And I can see how that got in the way.
Yeah, it was quite a big hurdle for everyone to jump over within the planning application, because Northern Power obviously wanted to get the electric as far up the valley as they could, and if it's underground, I think that sort of slows the power, like the as far as you can actually transmit the electric up. And if it's overground, then it's better and it's cheaper, but obviously it's got the cost of what it looks like as well.
Yeah, but so there's this issue, I suppose, Keith, where you start to get a bit of a boundary. People say, look, there are certain places where we cannot run a cable because it's going to spoil them.
Yeah, it's a very difficult issue, just as Catherine was saying. You need to reach some sort of compromise about the visual impact of overhead lines, which are significantly cheaper. Maybe at a lower voltage, maybe there's a factor of 3. At the higher transmission voltages across the whole country, it's a factor of on average 5 to 10. It's easier to fix if anything goes wrong. That's another kind of advantage. But the disadvantage of the underground cables, they're more expensive, they're harder to lay, and depending on the landscape, they're not really viable anyway. If you're in a kind of mountainous landscape, you kind of depending where you're trying to connect up, whether you're in the valley or whatever. But to get over the hills, very, very difficult if you're trying to do it with underground cables.
Now, you're in Scotland, I know, Keith, and you're at University of Strathclyde, and we think immediately of the more remote areas of the UK and those islands and so on. But I don't want to make the assumption that they're all off. Well, certainly not all off grid, but that even any of them are, because maybe the first thing you do is you get power to the islands.
Yeah, so a lot of the islands are connected. There's still some of the smaller ones that aren't, and they've been relying on diesel generators, just exactly the same as Catherine's been relying on. Although they've been able to club together and maybe buy a wind turbine of a reasonable size. And actually recently, the last sort of 10 to 15 years, I suppose, the dramatic fall in the cost of solar PV panels and of batteries. So they've been building up systems that combine wind, solar, battery storage. Of course, where it's not windy or sunny, maybe some of those places you can get a kind of small hydro turbine as well. And then with the diesel as a backup, while they're off the main electricity network connection. But other islands such as Isle of Lewis or Orkney are connected into the main grid. But Shetland, it's a long way off the north, as we know, of Scotland. That only got connected into the main grid just, I think, sort of about 8 or 9 months ago. And that was really because there's a very large wind farm built there. That it's a particularly windy place, but that justified building up this new connection. So that in itself reduces the dependency of people on the Shetland Islands to there's a whole lot of old gas turbines that they were relying on for a number of years.
Interesting. One more for you, which is this. Obviously, when you create power somewhere else and you move it, let's say, I don't know how far away my nearest power station is from my home, but let's say 20 miles. Moving it, you lose power because there's these frictional elements of sending it down a cable. So on paper, it should be more efficient for us all to generate our own power. And now we've got batteries. Can you see a day when I get the electricity in my house from some sort of pod in the garden and I drop a new battery in once a year?
Well, I mean, it's certainly true that, as I said, solar PV has come down a lot in cost. Batteries have come down a lot. Maybe not quite enough yet to sort of foresee that. And the other thing is the solar PV panels take up a lot of space. That's another controversial thing about what landscape is being taken up. If you've got space on your roof, that's great. But to get enough capacity, we need a lot of land to be covered with solar PV as well. So it's still, generally speaking, more expensive than having the network. And one of the reasons that electricity systems with a nationwide network has become viable and actually so cost effective has been our ability to transform the voltage. So we've got a low voltage supply into our homes, but the transmission grid operates at 400,000 volts, and transformers step it up or down. So higher voltages, the losses are much, much lower, but not as safe. You can step it down again when you get near to people's homes to a safer voltage, and that continues to be very cost effective.
Catherine, just one more. Sorry, it's just so interesting. This, I'm assuming that you or your neighbours tried to get your own power through solar.
Yes, we have solar panels on one of our sheds, and that was used alongside our generator as well.
How many solar panels did you have?
I think we've got about 12 panels,
okay.
I think it
on
is.
On a sunny day, could you boil a kettle with that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. My husband would be better to answer that question.
Give me an idea. Did they deliver enough power to light the house probably
yes,
not in winter, but...
It did during the day. It could cope with the power from the house, but our solar PV and generator had to cope with 2 households. So it's like 2 houses next to each other on the farm. So that's when it would put it under more pressure if both houses were using appliances. But the solar did help charge the batteries. So if you put the kettle on and the generator would start, but then it would turn off and the batteries would then power the house. So the solar helped charge the batteries for us for like through the night for lights or TV when it's not such a high load.
Okay, interesting. Thank you, Catherine, and good luck with the grid. It sounds like a great relationship is just starting.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Catherine Singer, who's there in what sounds like a beautiful valley in Northumberland. They've just been connected. And Keith Bell is expert in future power at the University of Strathclyde.